Hi, I'm Max Brantley with the Arkansas Times on Wednesday, November the 16th. News today includes the run-up to the legislative session. The Arkansas Senate is meeting today in its organizational session in which they'll make committee assignments. This is mostly bureaucratic stuff, but there's word in the wind that the Senate may pass a rule to prevent the Democratic Party, which holds only 11 of 35 seats, from packing a committee of its choice to have some influence on some area of public policy in Arkansas. The Democrats would like to get 4 members on the Education Committee and give them something near a controlling vote on that very important area of public policy. The Republicans are expected to do something to prevent that from happening. You'll remember that Democrats were able to get a majority of seats on the House Revenue and Taxation Committee when the House did its organization. Governor Asa Hutchinson has appeared at a Republican governors conference and talked about how he's hopeful that the Trump administration will not stand in the way of some changes in what he calls health care. This is the Medicaid program. And of course, I think the Trump administration likely will be friendlier to some of Asa Hutchinson's changes than the Obama administration was. When the governor talks about health care, you have to remember he's not really talking about health care, he's talking about money. He'd like to have a work requirement for people who receive Medicaid benefits. He'd like some other changes in the program that would actually restrict the amount of payments and services given under health care programs to make them cheaper to the state. That doesn't necessarily translate to better health care. Perhaps it might in a good managed care system, but be careful when they talk about health care. They're really talking about money. 3 county government organizations today, representing judges, sheriffs, and members of the county quorum courts, said they'd pass resolutions that praise the governor for putting a little bit more money into treating mental health needs, because a lot of people with mental health problems sometimes end up in county jails, and urging a comprehensive approach to not having jails become warehouses for people with mental problems. It's a good idea. The $5 million, you get the feeling strongly from these groups that the governor has allocated for some crisis centers isn't enough to deal with the huge problem that the counties must face in dealing with people that have a variety of ills that are not really criminal in nature. All of this is about, again, money, and money is in short supply, particularly at a legislature that is bound and determined first to cut taxes and then worry about services later. As expected, an income tax cut of enormous proportions for all veterans benefits, even reservists, even some people who work for the weather service, weren't even in the regular military, has been proposed. The second bill introduced yesterday after a school bus seatbelt bill was introduced. It would cost at least $13 million. There are questions about fairness, about singling out veterans. There's not really any proof that this would make us a haven for veterans any more than our low property taxes and low costs already are. But it's always popular to pass something for the veterans, and Republicans know a good demagogic opportunity when they see one. Criticism is arising all over to the Little Rock School plan to close some elementary schools. Annika Whitfield, a district activist who's been on the Community Advisory Committee, says school closures don't even necessarily save money. Marion Humphrey, the former judge who's also been active in the fight against the takeover of the Little Rock School District by the state, said this is just a plot by the Walton Family Foundation to take over the schools and guide money from public schools into private operators of charter schools. The other side says, of course, they have nothing but the children's interest at heart, but they don't have any interest in preserving Little Rock School District. That much is clear. Speaking of schools, a school board member in Blevins, Arkansas, that's a small town down in Hempstead County near Hope, was caught on Halloween wearing a blackface outfit and holding a sign saying Black Lives Matter on Halloween. He misspelled black, by the way, on that sign. Whether intentionally or not, we don't know for sure. Tom Bonner, the school board member who's been identified as wearing blackface, reportedly apologized to the school board at a meeting the other day. Haven't seen him step forward public and make an apology. I don't really think somebody who carries a Black Lives Matter sign and goes in blackface probably should represent a school district that has 80 black students among its some 400 students. Mark Lowry, the Republican state representative from Maumelle, illustrated this week the utter worthlessness of state ethics laws. He reached an agreement after the election that agreed he had indeed multiple times violated the campaign finance laws and not filing the required reports. It's not like he didn't know what to do. He was found to have done this in a previous election cycle. He says he just doesn't get the administrative rules. It's not really a credible answer. What he really doesn't want to do, I suspect, is to file timely reports that shows how much he's beholden to corporate interest and PACs for all the money he spends on his campaign. Not exactly a grassroots guy. And continuing in the Francisco Franco vein, yes, Donald Trump is still going to be the next president of the United States. Interesting flap today. concerned the American Institute of Architects. Its director hurried the day after the election to congratulate Trump on his victory and say how anxious the architects were to work with him on his big infrastructure plan. A lot of architects thought this was a little bit too much too fast. For one thing, does Donald Trump share the architects' view that climate change is an important problem in the world and something architects have to deal with? What about gender equity and pay? What about sustainable housing and a whole host of other issues? These are important things. Significantly, Marlon Blackwell, a world-renowned architect who lives in Fayetteville and is a distinguished chair of architecture at the University of Arkansas, was among those who urged very carefully sort of a go-slow approach. He said they shouldn't sacrifice their principles just because Donald Trump got elected. They ought to wait and see what he has in mind. That seems like fair advice, whichever side of the election debate you're on. I'm Max Brantley. I'll be back tomorrow.